Steve Mill. Mark worked with Steve. Y'all worked with Steve. So we had that old Dodge. We had that old Dodge Magnum, and my dad. We'd switched to Chevys. We had switched to GM cars in '78. It was a really bad year at Petty Enterprises, and we were down to just a few guys. And I've said this before. My dad winning the Daytona 500, and Adam winning that ARCA race are my two biggest accomplishments in racing, because I got to help build those cars. I got to help build the car my dad won, because we didn't have any other employees. Steve Mill, Richie Bars, and myself hung a body and went down there, and he won it. But anyhow, I go to Daytona. My dad says, if y'all can get that car ready, we'll go test it somewhere. That's what he said, test it somewhere, okay? So Steve and I, but he said you can't work on it during work hours. So we'd work after work. And after work, maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, because you just worked – everybody just worked long hours. Nobody had a 7 to 5 or 7 to 4 or 8 to 6, whatever. You worked all as much as you had to get a car running. So we got that thing running, and my dad had never, and I tell people this, and Dale Inman is the only one who when he's around, he'll vouch for it. My dad had never let me sit in a car and crank it. He had never let me back it out of the garage area and warm it up. He had never let me drive a car anywhere, not a race car. So we got that thing ready, and he said, we're going to put it on Clyde, which was a rollback truck we had. He said, we're going to go to Daytona and test. And I'm like, yeah, let's go to Daytona, man. I don't know any different. So we haul that baby down there to Daytona, and we unload it, and we warm it up that morning, and he strolls in there. You know, it's 10:30, 11 o'clock, because you can turn 2 over there. You got to make sure it's dry. You know how it used to, that dampness used to lay on it all the time. You had to make sure. So he rolls in. He said, well, come on. We went over and checked the racetrack with a piece of toilet paper. You know how you used to lay a piece of toilet paper on it and make sure that it'd soak up, because toilet paper would soak up water, where paper towel wouldn't. You could feel it. So he said, well, put that car cover in that right side and get over there and get in on that side. So I throw the car cover in the right side of this car, and I climb through the window, and he gets in the seat, and he's putting the seat belts on. He's got a helmet on, you know what I mean? He's got his sunglasses on. He's looking like Cool Hand Luke over there, man. We're getting ready to go. He fires that baby up, and out the garage area we go, man. And he runs up through the gears, you know, and we're riding along, not very fast. And we're on the bottom of the racetrack, and they just repaved the place, but there were some swells and still some bumps in it. And he said, when you come out, you need to stay on the flat. And we're on the flat, and he's showing me how to warm up. I never warmed the car up, you know. And you had to go out and ride around a couple laps, get some heat in the gear, get some heat in the engine and stuff, get the oil temperature up. It's before you plugged everything in. So he feels like it's temperature gauge is moving, pressure's moving, everything's looking good. It's hammered down the backstretch. We go off into turn 3 there, and you know, and he's driving along there, and he sits with the steering wheel right here anyhow, you know. And then he just starts talking to me, and he's like, well, way up here, you can see coming out of turn 4, the racetrack really flattens out. You want to be down here, you can't get up here, and if you're going to be up here next to the wall. And we could do this, and we'd go down the front stretch, and you'd come through the tri-oval, and he'd point, and we'd go into turn 1, and he's just screaming at me. I'm on a car cover. I got one hand on the roll bar here and one hand on the roll bar here. And I'm hanging on, I swear, I'm hanging on every word he's saying. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I got you, man. I got you. This is going to be good. And he's telling me all about, we run like 3 laps. We run 192, 193 miles an hour with me sitting on just sitting there. And he's just telling me how to do it. And we come in, and he pulls in the garage area, and I climb out and pull the car cover out, and he hands me his helmet, and he said, now it's your turn. And that was the extent of how he taught me how to drive a race car. That was my first lesson. He took me out in a car and did that. And it was crazy, man. Yeah, it was crazy. I couldn't run. Mark, you talk about going someplace and running 200 and growing up on a short track and knowing speed. I couldn't tell whether I was in the straightaways or in the corners. I couldn't tell whether I was running 120 or 260. I don't know. I think I ran 153 my first lap around Daytona, something like that, because you just didn't know where you were at. But it took a while. You know, it took 2 or 3 days to get up to where I felt like I could run. But man, I didn't have a clue how to drive a race car. I just knew I could go out there and do it by myself.